known you for a while, and I was thinking the other day about who are the most interesting members of the Boomer generation, and I mean, I was kind of making a list, and I came to the conclusion that the two most interesting members of the Boomer generation are Terence McKenna and David Icke. Now, Terence McKenna was a prickly dude, and I knew both of you. I know both of you. I did know Terence, but he was a very prickly guy and not exactly a friendly guy, whereas you are actually friendly. And you're now into what you would call the last years of your life. You're looking back at what you have and how you've been misperceived.
Oh,
that's kind of what I wanted.
Jay,
yeah.
I've not even started yet, mate. I'm not in the last years of my life. I'm in the first burst of youth. I'm going to be here a long time.
Good. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to your new book. But I was thinking, I talked to a lot of people, and they say, we had Christiane Northrup, Dr. Christiane Northrup, on our show a couple weeks ago. And who's really a middle-of-the-road New Age writer, mainstream, been on Oprah and all of the big shows, and she's a fan of yours. Wow. And I was like, what? Christiane Northrup is a fan of David Icke, right? And I started thinking about how many others are more likely to have been fans of yours, but not to be as brave as she is and say they are. And that got me thinking about that. For some reason, you create people are afraid to say that they like you in the mainstream. And I want to shatter that, because it's like there's nothing to be afraid of. David Icke has actually been right so many times. I mean, you were 25 years ago talking about the pedophile gangs, and everyone went crazy and said you were nuts and you were crazy. And I had actually done investigations on my own, and I was like, I don't know, I heard rumors. At the time, I wasn't sure. I was on the fence, but I heard rumors. And then when I started investigating the films of Stanley Kubrick and realized that was one of his text to his movies, was there was some kind of pedophile ring going around.
Eyes Wide Shut was an exposure of it, because Satanism is involved as well. I mean, the thing is, Jay, that people need to realize that the world is not just a little bit not like they thought it was and they've been told it is. It's nothing like they've been told it is, and nothing like they thought it was. And so when you are someone who is only interested in what's happening, they're not interested in a round of applause or a statue, and they're only interested in uncovering the truth, then that's going to take you into some bizarre areas, because the world is nothing like we are told it is. Thus, when you start uncovering real truth, as you've well found yourself, you start to enter what is to mainstream society a bizarre area, a bizarre arena. What happens then is the mainstream media, which is totally welded to the norms, they daren't go outside the norms because they're there to defend the norms. When you look at journalists, and there are honourable exceptions, yes, but in the main, you're not looking at a journalist and an uncoverer of truth. You're looking at a repeater of the official story of everything. So therefore, when people like me are uncovering the bizarre and the far out beyond the norms that are actually there to cover up what's really happening, then the mainstream media are going to treat me as if I'm crazy and a nutter. Sometimes because the journalists are targeting me knowing what they're doing, and overwhelmingly journalists target me in that way because they haven't got a clue what's going on. And thus they think what he's saying must be crazy because I'm a journalist, and if it were true, I'd know about it. Actually, they'd be the last people to know about it, as I knew from my own mainstream journalistic experience. And so then, because people and the media project me in a certain way, including much of the alternative media, by the way, which is most of that is in its
That's
own
right.
in its own prison and its own perceptual prison. Then people feel reticent about saying positive things about me because they don't want to be connected or by association connected with someone who has been presented as crazy and insane. Therefore, they'll support you, but they'll do it on the quiet. I always thought you were right, but don't tell me why. You know, that sort of thing. And therefore, we come back to where I really started out 30 years ago, which was pointing out things like the greatest prisons that people live in is the fear of what other people think. People are not living their own lives; they're living what other people say they should be, and therefore they're allowing other people to dictate their lives because they fear expressing their uniqueness and expressing their real view. And I'm kind of a flame in the or a canary in the coal mine for that, because I'm a sort of a personification of don't say you support him, because what will people think of you if you think they associate with him? This is where it comes from. But the greatest power that people can have, certainly in the realm of mind and personality, to overcome fear of what other people think and that prison that puts you in, is the power of not giving a damn. It's incredible power. If you look at the way people are corralled into perceptual acceptance of these norms, and even if they don't accept them, they live them anyway because they fear not doing so. In the end, it's because they give a damn what other people think about them. It's talk about giving your power away. Once you do that, the people you give a damn about have power over your life. And this cabal works on that whole foundation of intimidation, intimidating people into acquiescence. What they can't cope with, and they're going to see when my next book, The Trigger, comes out very shortly, what they can't cope with is someone who doesn't give a damn about what anyone thinks of them. They're only interested in the truth and what's actually happening. They don't know how to respond to that. How do we intimidate this guy? Well, actually, ladies and gentlemen of the cabal, you can't. Thus, when you come at me in the next few weeks and months over this new book, I'm going to laugh in your face. You know why? Because couldn't care less what you say about me or do about me. And that's the power they can't cope with, because they don't know what to do once you've reached that point. That's why they have to keep people in fear all the time. Fear of what other people think. Fear of consequences. Consequences, the great prison that people live in. Instead of doing what you know to be right and saying what you know to be right and saying what you believe to be right, you think, well, I'd like to say it, but what were the consequences for me of saying it? And once you do that, you're dead, because you'll always find a way to persuade yourself that the consequences are greater than the benefit of saying it. Well, I don't give a damn about consequences, Jay and Yvonne. I don't care. I don't even think about it. When I wrote this book, I knew what the consequences were going to be. Don't give a damn. Because the truth is the truth is the truth, and we have to start standing up for it and not being intimidated into silence.
That's right. I would really like to tell the younger generations to not be afraid, because nature loves courage, and barriers are broken down when the courageous step forward. I've seen it over and over in my own life, that when I was courageous, everyone around me, don't say that, don't do that, you're going crazy, people are going to tell that everybody's going to have a bad feeling about you, and then I would go do it, and then I would watch the barriers break down. And that's what I see in your career, is you're continuously breaking down these barriers, and and people always say, well, he's crazy. This isn't true. And then you watch, I think it was Schopenhauer who said an idea first comes in, and everyone says you're crazy. Then they say, well, yeah, maybe. And then later, oh, yeah, we knew that all the time.
Yeah.
That's what I see going on here.
I've had that, Jay. I've had that a lot. Oh, yeah, we always knew that.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, when you were slating me and laughing at me on the other side of the street, you knew it then, didn't you? But it's just part of the job. You just have to accept it.
I think it's really important too to bring up, we're talking about the media, and in my opinion, CNN here is a fine example of how the script keeps repeating and what is told and what is put out. And I was watching, David, your recent documentary about you on Amazon, and one of the things that I truly loved at the end was how you spoke about renegades. And it's in my opinion that all three of us are renegades in different aspects of this genre. But I love that you just brought up about this alternative, maybe new age genre, that we still have this mind control group think. There is a massive amount of group think in our society that is implying that we're all crazy. So, and I just love what you just said about that empowerment, about your own self and your sovereignty and what you believe in, and standing to that. I love that.
That's right, and the New Age, as is constantly promoting this thing, is that you have to constantly improve yourself. Yep. That you have to do all these exercises and all these things, and that's great. I'm not saying that that's not a bad thing or anything, but what I'm saying is that you don't really have to do those exercises. Not really. You actually are okay. And so the New Age still has its own people who are telling us the same thing as the mainstream media, which is you're not good enough, you're not well enough, you cannot, you're mentally unstable if you begin thinking things that are outside the fabric of reality. And honestly, how the thin spectrum that we can perceive reality, how in the world can we say that reality has been achieved, that we understand reality, and we don't? And the thing is that there's so much more going on that we don't understand. And David, I want to ask you about how the people that seem to be creating our reality through movies and television and the internet and everything, what is their end game, do you think?
Well, first of all, I was saying a long time ago that if you can put a name to what you think and what you believe, and if you can put a name to the group that believes it, you're in a prison. I don't care if you're a Buddhist, name. I don't care if you're a Christian, name. Muslim, name. Jewish, name. You're in a prison. Because
label.
We are, it's the labels I talk about, which control us and completely limit our sense of self, our sense of power, our sense of enormity of who we are. We are points of attention within an infinite flow of consciousness, awareness. That point of attention can be the size of a pea, which is where the Cabal want it to be, or it can be as massive as people are willing to open their minds to. Because, as you were kind of indicating there, Jay, we don't have to seek enlightenment. What a mug's game that is. First of all, if you're seeking enlightenment, you're always in a position or a state of seeking it and never finding it. We are enlightened. What stops us accessing that enlightenment are all the perceptual programs like onion skins that are wrapped around us from cradle to grave by the programming system we call a human life. You come out of the womb, parents start programming your perception, not because they're bad people overwhelmingly, but because they bought the norms that you're about and the process you're about to go through, and they're passing it on to you thinking it's the best thing for you. You go through the education system. What a misnomer that is, the programming system, where you get the state's version of everything, and anyone that steps outside of it gets a hard time at school. You go into college and university. You then go out into the institutions, having passed exams by telling the system what it told you to believe. And if you question anything, oh wait, Mrs. Brown, we got a problem with Johnny. Why? What's up? He's asking questions. I don't want to do it. And then you go out into the institutions and you meet people who've been through the same system you have, but earlier, and they've taken on the same basic norms, what I call in the books the postage stamp consensus. And then the mainstream media is pounding out 24/7 the norms of the mainstream postage stamp consensus. Anyone steps off it, like me and others, well, they get the treatment because they're mad or bad or dangerous, or in my case, all of them. And so it goes on, and then you've got peer pressure around you, everybody around you at work and at home and stuff like that, who've been through the same process of downloading the program, the postage stamp, and you go to your grave having traversed human life within a tiny, tiny, infinitesimal band of possibility. And that's the whole point of this whole system. It's to get them early. That's why they want them at school as early as possible, and then keep them in that postage stamp or on that postage stamp for the rest of their life. And of course, people like CNN and MSNBC and all the rest of them, BBC in this country, are pounding out the postage stamp consensus of everything. And now we have Silicon Valley, as they move information onto the internet so it can be algorithmically controlled, going into this mass hysteria of censorship to silence anyone that's challenging the postage stamp in any way, shape or form. And it's Silicon Valley is, I mean, when the trigger comes out, you'll see it's not just about 9/11. It's not just about 9/11. My God, it's not. But it is massively about that and the nonsense of the official story. But it also reveals, as my previous books have and my talks have, that where this is going is to attach the human mind, the human brain, to artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence becomes the human mind. See, up to this point, because to control, for a few people to control billions, they have to control their perception. They can't control them physically. They want to via AI, but up to this point they can't. They can do it in a small area, yeah, but they can't do it globally. It's just too many people. So what they've done is control perception through history by controlling information. Of course, religion has been incredibly important in this. In the years of you will believe what this book says, written by who knows when, and who knows what circumstances, or else, it's burned at the stake or your head comes off. So that was used to control information. And the mainstream media and what have you has been used at Silicon Valley now. But what they want to do is go to the next stage, which they're in the process of doing, which is to, instead of controlling information to manipulate perception, which becomes what? Behavior. Behavior comes from perception. Control perception, you control behavior. And what people will challenge and not challenge, do and not do, allow and not allow. But the idea in this next stage is to go beyond just manipulating perception via information control and go to direct control of information by AI becoming the human mind. And this is the whole thing. Ray Kurzweil, Silicon Valley, Google executive, is talking about this happening by around 2030. 2030 is a big year, of course. It's a big year. When you think about it, you've got the United Nations Agenda 2030, which is their agenda for centralization of control in the world and controlling the fine detail of our lives, overwhelmingly using the lie and the hoax of human-caused global warming. You then have Ray Kurzweil and people like him saying connecting the human mind to AI by around 2030. And then you've got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Green New Deal and these people in Britain, Extinction Rebellion, who shut streets demanding action over climate change that is not caused by humans. And they say we've got 12 years to save the planet from climate change. Well, 12 years takes us to 2030, 31. So this is the year that they're honing in on all the time.
Yep.
And all these dots are connected. It's not happening none of them are happening independently. It's part of a vast web of control and a vast agenda in terms of where they want to take the world. But they can only do it with our acquiescence. And that's what people like me and people like you are trying to do, is to alert people to the fact that actually what you're being told is happening is not actually why it's happening, or even what's happening often. And thus, this is the real story. And when people get the real story, they have an opportunity then to do something about it. You can't do something about something you don't know is happening. And this is why all the censorship's happening now. They're panicking, frankly. People say, oh, it's the power of Silicon Valley. Well, it is in terms of they control the technology and the algorithms, but don't let anyone think that's omnipotent power. That's panic, because they know the power of the truth coming out. Well, if they don't now, they're damn well going to find out the power of truth coming out very shortly.
Yeah, speaking of power, what I've recently uncovered in my own case is that the cabal is going to use the power companies, at least in America. I don't know about the rest of the world, but what I'm finding out, yes, all you really have to do is Google coal plant shutdown 2030, and you will see that all over the West, all over Canada, United States, Europe, they're all shutting down all of their power plants, and there's no alternative. In other words, they're saying solar, but solar is no alternative to coal, which runs 24/7. And so what they're doing is, as Rosa Corey, who we hope to know soon, knows, is that they're going to drive people out of the country into the cities. That's the 2030.
Exactly.
And it's happening right where I live. I live out in the country, and my power bill, if I didn't have solar, will be about $1,200 to $1,500 a month by 2025. In other words, nobody is going to be able to afford to live out in the country in the United States very soon here. And that is, I now realize that the power companies are the fulcrum for the 2030 population transfer that's going to happen. And I've been told by people in FEMA, which is our Federal Emergency Management Agency, that what they're going to do is they're going to cut the power, then they're going to come to your house if you live in the country. They're going to say, do you have power? And you'll say no. They'll say, do you have food in your refrigerator? You'll say yes. They'll say, then you have to leave this house because this house is now a hazard. And because the food is rotting. And so that's how they're going to clear everybody out. It's already a done deal. And yes, 2030 is it. I would say you're going to see major movement around 2020, 2025, and then the people in the country are going to get more and more isolated, and the people in the cities are going to become more, I mean, we're headed towards something that is going to be a massive depopulation, I believe.
And I also want to add, too, we're talking about the AI interface with the human and human consciousness. Don't forget all of these kind of what I call little black op medical devices that are coming out, just like the one that's called the Monarch for children with ADHD. It hooks up to your ear and to your brain waves. And then the auricular withdrawal device system. And so there, in my opinion, it's going the back way through what we call healthcare, to start these programs and to test them on the public without the public really realizing what's going on.
Yeah, well, you know, they have made films, training films, which are you can see for the military in the United States, where they're actually telling them that these mega population cities of utter chaos and criminality are what is coming and where the future is. So, I mean, when people deny this is happening, like journalists deny it's happening, they deny it's happening on the basis of absolutely no research on information that's there if they only bothered to go there. But of course, if a journalist goes into areas that are outside what the media control and ownership wants them to go, well, they're not a journalist for very long. And let no one think that because it's not in the mainstream media that the information is not there to factually support it. It is, but it's just the mainstream media won't go there.
No, they won't, and they can't because the control is so huge. At this stage, do you think that I believe that the cabal is actually now flipped all the switches and they're working OT to get this thing going right now. That's the reason for the censorship. That's the reason for everything that's happening. And I can actually see the plan. I know what they're doing. I don't know how I know this, but I can predict the future now, just like you have predicted the future so often. And so what do you think is going to happen over the next 2 or 3 years? Do you think that we're going to... the censorship on YouTube is huge. I mean, our show, should probably be getting 40, 50,000 views, but YouTube is just censoring us like crazy. We're not on any search engines. I mean, you have to really search to find our show. We're only getting 3K, 4K views because of the censorship. Do you think that there's going to be an alternative, or are we going down a slippery slope?
Well, I mean, that overwhelmingly depends on how people respond. But there are other esoteric things that are happening that are beyond the control of the cabal. I mean, the cabal control, if we bring it down to basics, a narrow band of frequency. I say it's a simulation. They're presenting us with simulated information, which we're decoding into what seems to be a real world when it's actually a virtual reality. And they need us to be operating in terms of our mental, emotional states within that band of frequency. Because then we're in the world, in the simulation, and of the simulation, and all the information we get is from the simulation. We're in it and of it. But like I said earlier, your point of attention can be the size of a pea in the simulation, in the matrix, or it can be as expanded as we choose to open our minds to allow expanded awareness in. And when you break through the walls of the frequency barriers, which I think personally, I've been writing this for years, that the frequency wall of or firewall of the matrix is the speed of light. I think when you go beyond the speed of light, then you're into realms that are beyond this this simulation. And people say, right, that the speed of light's as fast as you can go, and all this stuff, and things start to change when you get close to the speed of light, and strange things happen. Well, because you're starting to leave the simulation frequency information source. Things are going to be strange when you start doing that. And so when I started to expand my awareness beyond this frequency band of control, which I didn't realize existed at the time, then you start to see the world differently, because you're in the world, but you're not of the world in terms of your information processing. You now have another point of observation, and you start to see how the dots connect. You see that things aren't random. You see that things are all connected. And I wrote in the first book I wrote when after I had my head explosion in 1991 was called Truth Vibrations, and right, it's still available. And Truth Vibrations, I named it Truth Vibrations because when I went through a massive awakening in 1991 and got massively ridiculed because I was a television presenter at the time, or not long had been one. People thought I was crazy, and I was laughed at when I walked down the streets, laughed at on the television all the time. But in that early period, I met a lot of psychics. I mean, if you wanted to meet a psychic in those days, you just needed to follow me. And I weren't looking for them. They were just coming in my life, having never met one in my life before. And there was a common theme that they were telling me. And that is that there was a vibrational change coming, was in the process of coming, this is through the early 90s, that was going to act like a spiritual alarm clock. It was going to wake people up from their coma. And another thing it was going to do was to bring to the surface all that had been hidden from us. And we were going to see what was really happening as opposed to what we've been told is happening. Now, of course, in those days, 1990, 91, when I wrote and published Truth Vibrations, there was no evidence of that whatsoever, really, certainly not in the mainstream. But look now at the number of people that are questioning reality at various levels like never before. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. People that used to people that used to laugh at me in the street are now stopping me in the street to ask me questions about what's going on and giving their opinion, often an informed opinion now. And look at what we know now that we didn't know in 1990 about how the world's really controlled. Look at what we didn't know 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So this Truth Vibrations, as I dubbed it for the title of the book, is happening quite demonstrably and is having an impact, and it's going to go on having an impact. And so there is this esoteric vibrational information frequency awakening going on, which is starting to tease people open and to question things they haven't questioned before. And going back to what the point you made, Jay, it's my feeling very strongly, I've been saying this for years, that this cabal knows this is happening. It knows it's got a time scale, and if it takes too long, then this awakening is going to overwhelm what it wants to do. And so they're racing towards the finish line. What is the finish line? Connecting the human mind, human brain to artificial intelligence to suppress the awakening as well as control perception in a much more profound way. So over the next, over the few years now, it's not that many to 2030, we're going to see this tussle between the agenda wishing to impose itself in a state of panic, I would suggest, and this Truth Vibrations, which is not something that is kind of coming in a steady curve. It's going like that. People are becoming more and more affected. What I was told in 1990 was that people who were already awake to an extent were going to be affected first, and they would be touched by the Truth Vibrations first. But then even people at that time who were solid gold asleep were going to start being affected, and that's exactly what I'm seeing and what you're seeing. So let no one think that this is a lost cause. We're dealing with little boys in short trousers, right? That's what we're dealing with. They want us to believe they're omnipotent. They want us to believe they're all-powerful, because then we'll accept and acquiesce to them. They are not, right? And that's why I have no fear of them. What? Little boys in short trousers? The only reason, we go back to the classic line about, in the world of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. They are the one-eyed man, and they're only omnipotent in this level anyway, because they've made humans blind. When we become two-eyed, third-eyed humans that we're supposed to be, then the little boys in short trousers will lose all their power. And when we cease to fear these people, when we cease to be intimidated by these people, when we cease to believe in the power of these people, then again we'll see, like you said earlier, about when you do it, people actually realize it is possible when they said it wasn't before. We'll realize that the power these people have had over humanity has been purely illusory and has been based on persuading people they have the power. They don't. The only power these people have is the power we give them every day. Take it back, game over.
That's right, and we are the ones that are giving them the power what's really interesting is that you're right. They're only in control of 3D reality. They're not really in control of the extra dimensional aspects of our existence. And they don't understand it. And in a lot of cases, they deny that there's this extra dimensional aspect of the human existence. And that's in our favor. And if they're denying it, if they're just playing in 3D reality and not realizing that there's a larger 4D, 5D, 6D reality, then we can play in those fields and use that energy to subvert their order that they're trying to create. And also, you know, there's like a dark side and a light side to the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius is, in a lot of ways, a really good thing because it invokes going back to nature, it invokes going back to community and family and all these things that are really important, good food and all that. But there's a dark side also to the Aquarius movement where they're using those desires that we have for community and family and good water and good food and living in nature and everything, and they're subverting it. They're saying, oh, they're using those things to manipulate us into doing what they want, and they're using the environment and climate change and all these things that on the surface seem like, oh, that's very beneficent, but actually they're using it in a very bad way. And we have to realize that. And we had a guest on recently, Ice Age Farmer, who's a young guy, he's in his 30s, and he's like, screw it, I'm going back into nature, I'm going to take care of myself and my family, and then as an example, I will be to the community, and then maybe we can get other people in the millennials to follow suit. And I would encourage millennials to follow that kind of lifestyle, to get out of the city, to move into the country, start taking care of yourself and your family, unplug from the matrix. You can do it in the city too, though. And I think that that's the kind of movement that we have to start here in order to stop this Agenda 2030 thing from happening.
Well, what's happened, I would suggest, is that the education system particularly has been used for decades now to transform the perceptions of young people and to turn them into unknowing warriors for this cabal's agenda while thinking they're doing the opposite. They are... they have been persuaded they are fighting the establishment when they are doing the establishment's bidding. And you see this with the climate change caused by humans hoax and all that that entails. I said years ago when people said, well, why would they hoax global warming caused by humans? Well, because they want to centralize power. And there's no greater way of centralizing power globally, which is what they want, than to say we must have central power to save the world. So you have to create a myth that the world is in danger, in this sense, from climate change, and then you frighten the crap out of young people and children, child abuse in my view.
I agree.
Their world is going to be destroyed, and it's going to destroy their life. And then what you do then is turn the young generation against the older generation, another divide and rule. But there's something going on here which I think can be explained very clearly, and that is that what we're looking at is a form of Marxism that's being created. And first of all, people should realize that Marxism has nothing to do with power to the people. It's everything to do with power to the cabal. You can control centrally by controlling and accruing all the capital, all the money. And then you have the power, through the power of money and capital, to dictate what happens in the world. That's one way of centralizing power. And my God, through the less than 1%, that's what they are doing. But there's another way, and that is to create a political structure that actually creates a hierarchy in which the few will dictate to the many. And the same cabal, different faces, different expression, the same cabal will sit on the top of that. So you had the Russian Revolution, which led to the Soviet Union, and that was supposed to be a people's revolution. Well, they never told the people, unfortunately. What they did, and this is exactly how the New Age, in many ways, and the Green Movement and the progressive movement, and when I say progressive, I don't use the word liberal, because the last thing the progressive movement is liberal. I'm liberal. I come from a liberal background, truly liberal. Freedom of lifestyle, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Do what you like so long as you don't impose it on anyone else. That's liberal. But these people are not liberal. Progressive, I call them Soros progressives because he funds them, are there to impose their will in a Marxist, a new Marxist world. Now,
that's right.
How is this working? And how can it explain current events? First of all, Karl Marx was the banker's boy. He was owned by the bankers. He was put in for the bankers. He overwhelmingly did not write his manifesto. It was written for him. And then you had the whole basis of Marxism, which created these millions and tens of millions of deaths as a result of Marxist impositions, communist impositions. You had the use of groups, playing groups off against each other to transform society. And it started out with basically two groups, the haves and the have-nots, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Play them across against each other and you transform society and create this hierarchy of control called Marxist communism. What's happening now, which kind of explains current events, is we have a new kind of Marxism. And that is the transformation of society using groups known as self-identity groups. Self-identity is the new Marxism. So you don't just play haves and have-nots against each other. In fact, you don't even do that anymore in the new Marxism. You have multiple groups, seems to be getting more every day, that you can play off against each other. You once had feminists played off against male groups, and now you have the transgender groups, which have been played off against male groups and been played off against feminist groups, and so it goes on. Now, because this new Marxism, transforming society via the conflict between groups and struggle between groups, which used to be the class struggle, now it's the self-identity struggle. Because it's about self-identity, money and haves and have-nots don't matter anymore. So worrying and stressing about whether you call someone he, she, or they is now more important than homeless people with typhus breaking out in Los Angeles. The left used to be concerned about that. Now it's concerned about he, she, or they. And the other thing this explains is why we now have this, what would in the old liberal days have been unthinkable, and that's the alliance between the progressives and billionaires. The billionaires of Silicon Valley, the billionaires of George Soros and so on, who are funding this stuff. You got Soros, who said, I never think about the social implications of what I do, I'm just here to make money, who's spending tens of billions on the left, not just in America, but around the world. Why would he do that? It's divide and rule. Sheldon Adelson funds the right, Soros funds the left, control both sides, you control the game. It is quite simple when you break it down. Yep. Now, because it's not about have and have-nots anymore, and not about money anymore, as long as the billionaires support the self-identity group, oh, you're one of us, you're our mate. And this is where now you get this bizarre alliance between billionaires screwing the poor, screwing the world, in alliance with progressive, heart on the sleeve, I'm a nice person, I'm nicer than you. This movement of narcissistic virtue signaling, in which facts are irrelevant, only whether I present myself as a nice, caring person, that's all that matters. Facts are irrelevant. And it's that hijacking of that mentality, which has in turn hijacked the truly genuine liberal left, which is where I come from,
right.
Then you have this army of people who are doing the cabal's bidding. They couldn't achieve it without them. Who think they're anti-establishment. It's a head shaker.
Quite funny. It is. The left is like I used to say, I didn't leave the left left me. And the left has now become what I call like the South Pole. So if you're at the South Pole and you take a step in any direction, you're going north, right? So if you're in the left and you take a step any direction, you're politically incorrect and you're going to be exiled. Because that's the new way. That's what Twitter is doing and what the tech companies are doing. The ultimate punishment is exile, which is what they want to do to you and me.
Which brings us back, Jay, to where we started out. What's the antidote to this? People of the left, genuine people of the left, people who've been pulled into the progressive movement out of fear of not going there.
Right.
Remember the power of not giving a damn. Remember the power of not caring what other people think about you. Do what you know to be right. The alternative is not doing what you know to be right. And where's that going to lead us? It all comes back, all roads lead to the same point in the end, taking our power back.
So then what's going on is that we're having this kind of a universal enlightenment. I know you're right, because I mean, as I've said a couple of times, I had my plumber here the other few weeks ago, and he had to, before he started working on my pipes, he had to take a couple minutes to meditate and get in touch with his inner self before he started working. And I thought, 20 years ago, you would have never seen this. But now today, even the working class is now realizing that there's these other bodies, these other selves, these other worlds, invisible worlds that are all around us, helpers in the invisible world, believe it or not, who want us to succeed against the cabal. That's what people don't realize. There's all sorts of entities that want us to succeed. And every time we take a step into courage, those entities come around us and help us. I know it sounds very spiritual and maybe a little religious, but I really firmly believe this because of events in my own life. And when I witness your career and your life, I see, the most amazing courage I've ever witnessed, willing to take, tomatoes to the head on stage from the crowd and still go on. And I realize that the only way that we can succeed is for all of us to stop being confined by the prison that we're in right now. And you are the leading light of this. And I would like to know, where do you think you're going next in your career? Are you going to make documentaries, or are you going to just continue to write books, which are really good? Because, what your new book is going to do is it's going to bring on... Whoa. I don't even want to think about it.
And I'll laugh in its face, Jay. I'll laugh in its face. What was the Matrix?
Exactly.
The thing is that I'll go on writing books, and I'll go on doing talks where I can find places that will have me, but that it will change. It will change. This book, The Trigger, is the last of its line. Where I'm going now is okay. How do we change this? How do we reach this point of consciousness beyond which the cabal can't have any effect? It's basically going to the next level of the truth vibrations, if you like. And all the pointers and all the synchronicity, which has been absolutely fantastic in my life in the last month, 6 weeks, has pointed me in this direction very, very clearly. So it's going to be very exciting. And what it is also is the vibe that says, instead of being frightened, oh, what are the cabal going to do next? They have to start saying, what's he going to do next? Because I have the power, not them. We have the power, not them. And when we start to realize that, we'll realize that their power has been our power all along. So, I'm really up for this now. I feel younger than I've felt for decades. I have so much energy, and I'm really up for this next stage, which is going to be different, but very, 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 very powerful, I think, because it's time now that we stop running. Not some of us haven't been running for a long time, but where the human race in general stops running, turns round, and starts running at what we've been running away from. That's where I'm going now, big time. And this book is the start of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that what we kind of have to do is create the future in our mind, because they're creating that future that we don't want. And if we can start creating a future, visualize what the world would be like without the cabal getting in the way, what would we be like? And of course it would be this kind of the Aquarian future that we all want, which is family and community and health and wellness, and not rich. I don't really think that what we want is wealth. What we really want is enough to go around and to be healthy, and for our families and friends to be healthy. And it's really not that much. And once you remove the amazing amount of money that the cabal is using and eliminate that, just look at Jeffrey Epstein. How did this guy get to be a billionaire? When you start examining his life and you realize there's no way in the world this guy was doing money markets and things. He wasn't smart enough. No. And then how did he get? Clearly he was given the money. Actually, David, I don't even believe anymore that wealthy people have money. No. I believe that wealthy people have been given money to do things, and when they die, they take that money back. Yeah, I've seen it many times in my life. Wealthy people who die, they literally have hundreds of millions of dollars. They die, and there's no money at all when they die. Well, that's so it isn't passed on to their kids.
That's why I've always said people like Soros and Gates and Musk and Zuckerberg. They seem such powerful people, but they're gophers. They're just gophers in this cabal, and they'll keep getting their money while they serve the cabal. The moment they won't or resist it, when suddenly things start to happen, and they're not as wealthy as they were before, and certainly not as powerful. I mean, the people we see in the public arena are only those that are doing the bidding of the real power, which operates in the shadows, and It's so important that people look at their self-identity and stop self-identifying with the labels that we're given and we give ourselves, and start realizing that we are consciousness. We are the consciousness having those experiences. Our name, our color, our race, our background, our income bracket, these are all experiences. Our sexuality is all an experience for the consciousness that we are, always have been, and always will be. The eternal point of attention that will traverse and explore forever. And we've been trapped in this virtual reality hoax by believing it's real, and by believing these people have power. Once we take our power back, we'll realize that none of that was true. But you see, what you believe, you perceive, and what you perceive, you experience. When you are in a certain perceptual state through programmed perception, that's not just something, again, operating in a vacuum. That perceptual state represents a band of frequency. It's resonating a band of frequency. You are resonating within the band of frequency of your perceptions. And therefore, if you are interacting with what I call the cosmic Wi-Fi, you get a computer, you sit at a computer, and you go on the internet. via, say, Wi-Fi. And your perception, even in this analogy, is deciding where you go on the internet. And therefore, what part of the Wi-Fi you are going to download and decode onto the screen. And we're doing that all the time. Our perceptions are interacting energetically, in frequency terms, with cosmic Wi-Fi, the quantum fields of possibility and probability. And our perceptions are dictating how much and what part of that cosmic Wi-Fi we are interacting with and thus decoding into a life experience. This is why someone who believes they have no power will live a life of no power, because they're interacting with possibility and probability in such a narrow, low vibrational interaction. Someone who says, I am all that is, has been, and ever can be, they are interacting with a vast scale spectrum of this cosmic Wi-Fi. And thus, their life will be an adventure. There'll be amazing synchronicity in their lives. Things will just happen when they need them. Not because they're better people than little me, I have no power, but because they are interacting with possibility and probability in a much more expanded way. So the idea, because this cabal knows this, it knows that if it can hold us in a narrow band of perception, especially personal power perception, it's making us operate on a narrow band of frequency, which means we're interacting with possibility and probability within that narrow band of frequency. Gotcha. That's why throughout history, doesn't mean just today, throughout history, people that have been the seers, the people that understood the nature of reality, they're the ones that have been targeted by authority, whether it's the church or whether it's the censorship of Silicon Valley today, whatever. Those that can see beyond are the ones that are targeted, because they don't want people to, A, go beyond it, and certainly not go beyond it and then tell other people, actually, the world's not like you thought it was. They want to keep everyone in here. And to do that, they have to hold us in a perception of little me, I have no power, what can I do? Well, change the bloody world. That's what we can do, and we're going to. We are going to. Let anyone, no one doubt that. Let not the cabal doubt that, because we're coming for you, mate. Not violently, not in terms of, you know, we want to hurt you or we want to hate you, because if we hate you, we become you. What's the point of that? Exactly. But we're coming for you vibrationally, and we're coming for you with non-cooperation, and so you better get used to it, mate. The game is almost over when you think it's over. In your point of view, it's soon going to be over in our point of view.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree 100%. This is a grand illusion that we are powerless. And I'm kind of backtracking here a bit, back and forth, but we're coming into this world. You know, we're not broken. We're beautiful, energetic, divine beings, every single one of us, and to get out of this construct, this mind prison, right? You have to understand life is about experiences, and we are here to learn, but we're not broken. There's nothing to fix. It's about letting go of that hate, that loosh, and it's that loosh that keeps you in this construct. And so that has been what's so difficult, is seeing how much hate, if you let go of the sides, those are the labels, letting go of all of that, and just being the beautiful you. And backtracking to when you're born, I think there's a sense of programming going on in the womb, even based on the vibration, based on all the radio waves and all this. And David, I'd like to go back to for myself, I've been on the fence here going, is this a simulation? What is going on? And where do you think your energy is outside of this matrix? Where are we?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Ultimately, we are the entirety of infinite consciousness. The question is, how much of that consciousness are we going to let in? If you only let in a bit, you can work down the store and think that's all you are. I'm just Ethel down the store. Who am I? I've got no power. But
and also, we let fear guide us.
Well, so
we hear an idea,
that's the prison.
And it scares us. And yeah, it's fear that is guiding people to contain their reality. In Stalinist Russia, I'm a student of Stalinism, and that's what it was. It was a world of fear where everyone was afraid to say anything because they would be shot immediately. And
that's where we are now. You know, say anything and you get abused. The thing is not to care, not to care. You're this, you're that, you're that, you're this. Oh, thanks for sharing that with me. Have a nice day.
Right. And I also think, you know, the awareness with what social media is, where that comes from, how it's utilized for hate or to troll or to take down your fellow man, and just the I think in your documentary, David, you called it digital heroin.
Digital heroin. Yeah, the thing is that it makes me smile that you know, the inversion is so fundamental in the progressive movement that it believes it is anti-hate when it has hate in its face. It has hate in the way that it wants to project hate at people that it disagrees with. And what don't they talk about? They don't talk about love. Antifa doesn't talk about love. It talks about anti-hate. And anti-hate is not love. It's just another form of hate, quite clearly. And we need to start talking about love. Not the love of just attraction, which is often an illusion of love, which has a limited time often, but the love that comes from knowing that we are all expressions of each other. You know, if you get out of this and into this, you let your intuition be your guide instead of, you see, what happens when you feel an intuitive feeling? Where do your hands go? They go here.
Yeah, it's your heart space.
Right? And what do we say? I just know. I just know. You don't say, I just think. You go, I'm thinking. I just know. That's telling you where the real connection to expanded consciousness is coming from. Because this knows because it connects with a level of awareness beyond the program that does know. This thinks because it doesn't know and it has to work it out. And therefore, this what has happened to me in the last 30 years is I've gone from here to here. And let this be the guide. Yes, this can come in and it can intellectually work things out and connect things, but this is doing most of the connecting here. And this is where wisdom comes from. This is where the kind of love comes from that wouldn't even consider consequences for doing what it knows to be right. Because to consider consequences is to consider not doing what it knows to be right. This will never do that. This will give you a list of reasons why you should avoid the consequences or think about them, and then not do what you know to be right. This will never do that. Just knows what you know. Does what it knows to be right. Consequences. What are they?
Isn't it interesting how the system, and for an example, at the end of your documentary, David, that passion and that heart space, that intuition, all of you showed when, and I get emotional, in the sand when somebody wrote out freedom, and you started to show emotion, and see, people are going to come down on me right now for showing emotion. We have become such a planet to not have any emotion and to be condemned for that. And this is out of my passion for what you talk about. So, but it's interesting how we get condemned for having what our human passion, emotions, and that heart space. We're getting shut down to not have it.
Yeah,
and that has to stop.
Then what you say is, I'm going to show my emotion, and if you don't like it, we'll do the other thing. That's all the same with me. Funny thing about me in my life is I don't think I've ever cried in my life about something that was sad. When I see something that was sad, my instant reaction is, what can I do about it, if anything? I cry a lot at things that are happy. When I see happy people, when I see joy, it always makes me cry. And that moment was just extraordinary synchronicity, because we'd been filming that documentary, Renegade, for the best part of a year. We've been in 4 countries. They came across to the Isle of Wight, where I live, where I'm speaking now, which is on the coast where I live, and
beautiful.
And we were talking about, what did you do, when you came here as a kid? And I said, well, I used to stand on this pier and I used to watch the steam trains go up and down. I used to love steam trains, still do. And so we said, oh, we'll go and film there. And so we filmed around the island. We could have done this filming on the island any time in that year. We could have filmed on that pier any time in that 2 days, but we went then because they wanted the sun coming down over the horizon, as it does in Ryde, where I live. And my son Jamie just said to me while I was on the pier watching a train go past, the electric trains now, unfortunately, look at that. And I looked across, and that beach was where I used to sit as a kid, watching steam trains from the beach next to the pier. And there was 2 young children and their mother writing in the sand, freedom, a big freedom. And
wow.
it just hit me. It comes out brilliantly on the film. It just hit me. First of all, the joy that here was 2 kids whose future we don't want to be the nightmare that the cabal wants it to be, writing freedom. The synchronicity touched me emotionally, because what it said to me is the synchronicity of my life has said so many times, there is another force at work here, and it wants an end to this. And that came together also after a period when I'd been traveling around the world and seeing this transformation happening among people who were questioning what they were never questioned before, and that all came together in that emotional moment. And you just do it. So you cry. So what? What do you think? What do people think the tear ducts are for?
Right. No, it's a beautiful moment. That just brought it in for me, that moment. And I'm thinking, my gosh, look at how many people are going to attack that. How many people are going to judge another person for showing emotion, or just however it gets gaslit or whatever. But these are the things we got to get back to, is it not?
I feel so.
Passion is outlawed, or it's going to be outlawed. It appears that if somebody acts overly passionate at the grocery store, they're going to get the police called on them. And so people are now being groomed to not be passionate. But passion is what we are. And, that's what David Icke has, is tons of passion for the truth. And, I mean, I'm not going to stop being passionate. And if I have to cry or even get angry a couple times, then that's the way it's going to be. And I really have to say, again, about the New Age, the New Age has its own problems. It's constantly telling us that we're not good enough either, just like the Cabal is telling us. So the New Age has now gone down a path which I think we have to stop, which is, you have to meditate, you have to eat a certain way, you have to do certain things a certain way in order to be enlightened, and it's not true. You're already enlightened. It's actually the Cabal that put the encumbrance on us to make us not enlightened.
Yeah, it is absolutely not true. And I'll tell you a story about that. This body is not physical. It's a waveform information field. And because it's waveform information, it is malleable. It is changeable by other frequencies that we generate through our mind. Thus, the body responds to the mind. It is an expression of the mind. And thus, the perceptions, the perceptual programming not only affects our perceptions of things mentally, emotionally, it dictates the nature of our bodies and our illnesses as well. And so when I was 15, I joined a football club. I became a professional footballer. 15 and a half, a problem started in my left knee, and through the next few years, it got worse and worse, went into joint after joint. At the age of 21, I had to stop being a professional footballer because they told me I had rheumatoid arthritis. They told me that it was a nice thing to hear at 21, that I would, probably or could be in a wheelchair by the time I'm in my 30s. And they gave me a jar of pills. I remember they were called Indocid, and I said, "Will this get rid of it?" They said, "No, it might take the pain away." I said, "Well, keep them, because I'm not taking them." And so I went through a period in my life where, I was in a lot of pain, and you just get up, you get on with it. And then as I started to realize, actually, the mind, the consciousness is dictating the nature of the body, not the other way around. Well, it can do if we allow it to, but it's not how it should be. I decided that I wasn't having it anymore. And I wasn't going to go down this road of rheumatoid arthritis getting worse and worse as it was. And I'm now 67. I feel 27. And I have I have no problem whatsoever with rheumatoid arthritis. I am in no pain. There is nothing for a person of my age that I cannot do, and a lot younger that I can't do physically. And by now, I should be in a wizened state if I was alive at all, because of rheumatoid arthritis. Now, people say you must eat this food, and I try to eat good food. I try to eat organic food and what have you, because I don't want to, eat and consume chemicals and all that stuff. And I try to have pure water, and I do try to do these things, absolutely. But the power of the mind is greater than all of it. All of it. And if we decide what we will have and what we won't have, and know that we have the power to dictate that, then we'll be amazed at what bodily, physical things that we can do and stop and change, that we think, not least to mainstream medicine. What do mainstream medicine tell you overwhelmingly? Well, we can't do anything about that. Well, you'd have to live with that. Well, I choose not to. And everyone has the power to do that. The power to dictate their own reality, and realize that what is happening in their body is a reflection of their mind. Change that, and the body will reflect that. It's an incredible world that we live in, an incredible reality, an incredible infinity. And we've allowed ourselves to believe that it's some limited, random, solidified accident. It ain't. We're creating it all the time. We change our perception, we change everything. It's one of the phrases I use in the books. Change your perception, change your reality. It's that simple. It really is.
Well, you're living proof, because you're looking better than you've looked in years. I got to tell you, you really are. And I mean, we got together in 2008 for your sellout performance in Los Angeles, and you look younger now than you did then. And that was, 11 years ago now.
Yeah.
So you're working.
Quite a way ago. And what have I done? My mind's changed. My mind's changed. Yeah. My perception's changed. The perception of my own power has vastly increased. That's all that's changed. And anyone can do it. Literally anyone can do it. It's just a choice. And I'm hoping to come next year, Jay, to America and do a lot of talks in America next year.
Yeah, I'd like to help you with that. Maybe Yvonne could help too. We'd like to get David into a number of big cities, especially the West Coast, which is more apt to like him than the East Coast. And so any help that anybody out there can give us to get David into America. He's being ostracized by the left unfairly, by the way.
Yeah, and by the Zionists, the Zionist hate group network, of course, are trying to stop me speaking anywhere. But well,
it's funny because I interviewed Noam Chomsky in 1995 on my radio show in Seattle, and I asked him. I said, "Is there any group that you're afraid of, that scares you?" you know, and he looked for up in the air for a couple minutes. He looked and he said, yeah, there is one. And I said, who is that? He said, the Zionists scare the hell out of me. Yeah. So there you go. Well, you know, I mean,
I can tell. But you can't give in to the fear.
I can tell the Zionists now, they don't scare the hell out of me. Bring it on.
Good.
Bring it on.
And let's be clear. Being critical of Israel and their policies is not anti-Zionist.
No.
It's not even anti-Jewish. It's just as I criticize American foreign policy doesn't mean that I'm anti-American. I mean, I'm doing it because I love America, and that's why I am criticizing it, because I don't want America to make mistakes. So when I'm critical of Israel and Israeli policies, that doesn't mean that I hate Jewish people or that I'm even anti-Jewish. It means that I like Israel and I want them to succeed, and their policies are wrong-headed. And if we're going to go into a war with Iran, which Israel apparently wants, that's a huge mistake. And we've got to stop it. And I don't think anybody in this country wants this country to go to war with Iran. And I know the Iranians don't want to go to war with us. So I please the Zionists and the neocons have to stop trying to push us into another war.
The thing is, though, that, I mean, you know, my philosophy on life, as I've said, is that we're all a point of attention within the same flow of infinite awareness. And the labels are just experiences for that consciousness. So my philosophy is the ultimate non-racist philosophy, because I say race and all this stuff, it's just an experience. Chill out. You know, there'll be another one along in a minute. So the idea that I'm anti-Jewish is ludicrous. It's just a label for the same consciousness I am. But what's happening, of course, is that the incredibly well-funded, incredibly well-organized, vast network of ultra-Zionist hate groups operating out of Israel, ultimately, the Prime Minister's office, Mossad, and so on, are a protection racket. And they're not a protection racket to protect Jewish people from discrimination. They're a protection racket to protect Israel from legitimate criticism and exposure, and the far-right regime in Israel from legitimate criticism and exposure. The idea that this protection racket, what I call the anti-Semitism industry, is about protecting Jewish people is shown to be a fallacy at first base when you think that Jewish people in this country, Britain, and in other countries that criticize Israel are turned upon and abused even more by this far-right Israeli protection racket than non-Jewish people, because they're very much harder to label anti-Semitic, although bizarrely they try. And so it's, when I say coming together, the vast majority of Jewish people need to come together with everyone else as well, and realize that they're being manipulated by their cabal in the same way as everyone else is. And so when the hate groups of the anti-Semitism industry hurl abuse at me, I just laugh, because you know, you're not going to persuade me I'm anti-Semitic. I'm not. That's a misnomer as well. Anti-Semitic, of course. Why should I get upset about you saying I am when I know I'm not? And I know why you're doing it. You're doing it to silence me. It's not about protecting Jewish people for what I'm writing. They don't need to be protected from what I'm writing. It's about silencing what I'm writing for everybody, not just Jewish people. And so I've just, this year I was banned from Australia. I was given a visa to do 6 cities in Australia in September last year. And 4 hours before my plane left for Melbourne in February from LAX, I received an email from the immigration minister saying my visa had been cancelled. And it was cancelled because of 3 people, mainly one. One was a guy called Divi Abramovich, head of an organization, man and a dog as usual, but well-funded and organized, called the Anti-Defamation Commission (bracket C Anti-Defamation League in America), and two ultra-Zionist politicians, and they put pressure on the immigration minister to stop the visa, which his Home Ministry had granted. And 25 million people in Australia were told what they could and could not hear by those three people, particularly one. And that's the protection racket. That's how it works. And it doesn't have to tell the truth. It just it can't tell the truth. It wouldn't get anywhere. It has to lie about you. And of course, the media then pick up the lies and repeat them. The politicians feel under pressure. I don't want to be seen as anti-Semitic, so I'll stop his visa. And this is how it works. But what you have to do is just keep going and laugh in their face. It's no good getting mad and whatever. It just drains you. You just say, okay, well, here's a problem. How am I going to get around it? And I tell you now, I will be going to Australia at some point because they don't have the power to keep me out forever. They don't, for the reasons I've talked about earlier.
Yeah, it is interesting how that rubric of anti-Semitism can stop all free speech.
It freezes people, Jay, doesn't it? People go, oh, don't accuse me of that. Yeah, but it's not true. It's not true. Oh, well, I know it's not true, but what will people say about me? Well, we're back to where we started. It's not true.
Well, so it's exactly right. I've had people come to me and tell me that you were anti-Semitic, and I merely turned my laptop over to them, put it on Google, and I say, okay, fine, where the statements that he made are. Let's see it. And they can't ever find it. They can't find your anti-Semitic statements because they don't exist. You're talking about truth and the cabal, and somehow it's been misconstrued as anti-Semitic when actually it isn't at all.
It's been misconstrued on purpose, though, of course, and that's where this new definition of anti-Semitism comes in. Yes. More and more people are adopting out of fear of not adopting it, because it encompasses what? That criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. I've already noticed as well that when anyone now talks about a banking conspiracy, that's anti-Semitic by definition. You don't have to mention Jewish people. Just say the banking conspiracy. Oh, that's anti-Semitic. So what they're doing is using this all-encompassing term, which is a total insult to Jewish people to exploit it like that, by the way. But they couldn't care less about Jewish people. It's not about Jewish people. It's about this cabal. They use this all-encompassing term now to stop you talking about a global conspiracy of any kind. Don't even have to mention Jewish people involved in any way, shape, or form. You can say they're not. You're still anti-Semitic if you talk about a global conspiracy. Now that is not protecting Jewish people. That is protecting the conspiracy.
That's Stalinism. That's exactly what happened in Stalinist Russia. Right. You could not say the truth, and if you did, you were killed.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, Jay. One of the things they accused me of being anti-Semitic for is I said in a book called "And the Truth Will Set You Free" in 1994-5 that a large ratio, basically, of people involved in the Russian Revolution were Jewish. Now that is the most provable fact. People have gone and looked at the original documents of the time from 1917, 18, and the names show that to be true. Okay? It's absolutely provable. But here's the question they don't ask, which needs asking. Why, after a revolution in Russia that, to a very large extent, involved Jewish people, were the Jewish people of Russia targeted in the pogroms and targeted for abuse, death, destruction? Because there is a cabal that hates Jewish people that is posing as Jewish people. That's why, and that explains a lot of things about the way Jewish people have been treated over the years.
That's exactly right. A lot of the kulaks, the peasant farmers in Russia who were killed by Stalin, a lot of them were Jewish, by the way.
So why would a Jewish-dominated revolution target Jewish people? Answer that question, and so many things come into focus.
I would say because Jewish people have high IQ, and if they begin to figure out the cabal and how the cabal is going to have a target on their back too, they're going to rebel, just like we're rebelling.
Yeah, well, the truth of that is going to come out very shortly. Let's put it that way.
I would agree. I think we're in for a big time, and I'm glad you brought up these new anti-Semitism laws. I think they're really dangerous. They're passing them right here in America right now. Any criticism of Israel is now going to be considered anti-Semitic. Yeah. It's something we really can't let happen.
Yeah, who benefits? That's the question. Who benefits from that? The far-right regime in Israel.
I don't want to criticize anybody. I want to be able to criticize any country, any people on earth. I want that freedom, and I don't want it taken away, because that's how we reach the truth, is by having a free speech, everybody open questioning of everything, and that's how we're going to advance. But if we stop that, if we have brakes on that, then we're going to fail as a species, and I'm not prepared to let that happen.
All you have to do is look at every single tyranny, whether it's Stalinist tyranny, fascist tyranny, Chinese tyranny, whatever tyranny it is. There is a common theme. There's many common themes, but there's a major one in the current topic. They want to control what people see and hear, because that controls the perception and that controls the behavior. And what we're seeing now in this so-called Free West is exactly the same process on a massive scale. Who benefits? Anyone that wants to control human perception. Well, who would want to do that? A tyranny. And that's what we're trying to expose, and are exposing, and will expose. And it is coming down. It is.
I agree. So the book is The Trigger. David Icke is the author. It's coming out. It's going to be absolutely mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. I guarantee it. Actually, I think this book is actually the culmination of all your last, 10 books. Because it's like you're taking everything and putting it together into one spot so we can clearly see what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. And it hides from nothing. Nothing.
Mm. One of your quotes, David, that I found was, which pertains to the conversation you were just having, those that shout racism the loudest are those that are obsessed with race, while I see it as an experience, nothing more. We are all expressions of the same one consciousness having different experiences. What is race? Same consciousness, different color vehicle. That is all.
That's right. People who yell racist are kind of exposing themselves as being obsessed with race.
They're obsessed with race, yeah. They're obsessed with labels. Yeah. That's why they're so asleep.
Labels. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they want to make everything a label.
When, David, when does your book, The Trigger, The Lie That Changed the World, when does that
The Lie That Changed the World. Who did it and why? It's it's a book that is about who really did 9/11, but in the telling of that story, it reveals who controls our lives today. It's an extraordinary story, and it's like throwing a nuclear weapon into the room, really, at a time of censorship that says you mustn't throw a pop gun into the room. So it's going to be interesting, and it's officially published on September the 11th. There's been a fantastic interest in it already, and if people pre-order it, they can do it through davidicke.com. They'll get the book before the publication date, and one's on its way to you, Jay, now.
Oh, great, because I'm sure that's going to be like an all-night read for me. Looking really forward to it.
It's not short.
And I'll send you about what you've done, so you can read it.
928 pages, and I think I'm going to have to get myself a copy. So
it's two books. Yeah, it's two books. It's two books. The first two books in one. The first part of the book demolishes the official story of 9/11. The second half of the book tells an amazing story leading up to who really did it and why.